prevention, disease control, and debt reduction of poor countries. He is currently professor at Columbia University. He is also director of the Center for Sustainable Development in the Earth Institute at the university. Professor Sachs is also president of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network and a commissioner of the UN Broadband Commission for Development. He has been advisor to 3 United Nations Secretary General, and currently he also serves as an SDG advocate under Secretary General Antonio. Professor Sachs was twice named as one of the Time magazine 100 most influential world leaders and was ranked by The Economist among the top 3 most influential living economists. He is also author of many books, articles, and publications. To name a few: The End of Poverty, Economic Possibilities for Our Time, The Ages of Globalization, Geography, Technology, and Institutions, A New Foreign Policy Beyond American Exceptionalism. He has also received many awards. To name few, he has received Tang Prize in Sustainable Development Report. He was co-recipient of the 2015 Blue Planet Award, Sustainable Development Leadership Award 2020 in Delhi, India. He was also awarded the Padma Bhushan in 2007, the third highest civilian honor by Government of India. Uh, Welcome, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. We all are very thrilled. Uh, I would now request Professor Nirupam Bajpayee to say a few words before we formally invite Professor Jeffrey Sachs to deliver his talk on turning UP into a $1 trillion economy.
Good evening, everybody. I have been asked to say a few words about Professor Sachs and my work in India over the last roughly 3 decades now. We go back 1995 when I joined the Harvard University and began working with Professor Sachs. So as far as India goes, one of our, I think the first engagement we began was in 1997 with the government of Tamil Nadu. This was a request from the then Minister for Commerce and Industry, Mursoli Maran, who said that if we would be interested to work on state economies, Tamil Nadu would be very interested in working with a team of Harvard faculty members. And so began in 1997 a program for 5 years with the state government of Tamil Nadu, essentially looking at state-level economic reforms, the use of the internet at that time to develop internet kiosks in rural areas. A project was set up along with MIT called the Sustainable Access to Rural India, and several sector studies, industry studies that the Harvard team undertook between 1997 and 2003. Subsequently, we also began working with the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, again at the request of Minister Mursoli Maran. At that time, India's goal to achieve foreign direct investment was $10 billion. The entire country, the goal was how to achieve FDI of $10 billion. And so we did a report for the ministry in the year 2000. Incidentally, in the year 2000 also, we had informally been advising the then Prime Minister, and one of the major initiatives that we took was the development and implementation of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. This was something that the Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister, announced in his August 15, 2000 Independence Day speech, the idea being that the government would try to attain universal primary literacy between the year 2000 and 2010. And both Jeff and I were very fortunate to work on developing the scheme, and to my mind it has worked, I think, in the last 20 years to have provided access to public schools across the country in a very, very successful manner. The issue now remains about quality of teaching and learning outcomes in public schools, but in terms of access, certainly Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan has done a great deal. I think the next engagement of ours was very interesting, that came from the state of Gujarat. The then Chief Minister Narendra Modi found out when we moved to Columbia that we had some of the best seismologists at Columbia. And since Gujarat had an earthquake in 2001 in Bhuj, he was very keen to set up a seismological research facility in Gujarat, which our seismologists worked with the government of Gujarat for 2 years and set up an institute for seismological research in Gandhinagar, which is operational and has been doing a lot of interesting work. Besides seismology, we worked on broad issues of sustainable development in Gujarat, on agriculture, on the impact of climate change on agriculture, the setting up of the Vibrant Gujarat Investment Promotion Summit, soil health cards, and so on. And finally, we also worked on the National Rural Health Mission. When it was launched in 2005 by Dr. Manmohan Singh, we were requested to set up an international advisory panel on the international best practices in public health on the National Rural Health Mission. This panel ran for a period of 7 years and had biannual meetings in Delhi to bring together international public health experts for the consideration of the Ministry of Health, Government of India. We are now in UP and very excited to work on a project here which is focused on technology and how it can help improve service delivery, especially with mobile technology. And the district that has been identified for us is Sitapur, where Jeff, Sonia, and I visited today. This is going to be a 3-year project in the areas of agriculture, health, education, and Anganwadis, the ICDS. And we look forward to a meeting tomorrow with the heads of departments of these sectors to take this project further. Thank you so much.
Now I invite Professor Jeffrey Sachs to deliver his talk on turning UP into a $1 trillion economy. Sir, what do you say?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, and thank you so much for the opportunity to work together. We're really looking forward to it, and it's a great honor for all of us and a special treat for my wife and me to be here and to be so warmly welcomed. For Nirupam, this is home, so this is also a very special treat. India is changing, of course, very rapidly and very positively, so this is exciting to see. Like so many economists in the world, India was my inspiration for going into economics and for going into development economics. We first came to India, my wife and I, in 1979. So this is 44 years ago. And let me say things have changed a bit in the interim, but we have been very fortunate in our careers to watch the changes, to admire the dramatic and exciting innovations and progress that's underway, but especially to enjoy friendships that now date for more than 40 years. And so this is a special treat. I was asked to speak about how Uttar Pradesh can become a $1 trillion economy. I'm going to leave the details to you, the planning ministry and all of the leaders, and talk about generally how India and Uttar Pradesh can progress very, very rapidly and give perhaps some hints or ideas about the actual analytical work that is needed to answer that specific question. Because the question of how to achieve particular goals by particular dates is itself a very important analytical problem, something that I hope that the planning ministry is going to answer in detail, and anything that I and we can do to help give good answers to that, please count on us. When I asked for a piece of paper to take notes, I was brought this book. I don't know if this is a book that's widely used, but it's the Sustainable Development Goal book. So this already is the starting point. The Sustainable Development Goals really provide a useful framework for government to measure, to monitor, and to plan. And so, as much as I would like to see Uttar Pradesh achieve a $1 trillion economy, I'd really like to see it achieve all of the Sustainable Development Goals. And by doing so, it would achieve a $1 trillion economy. The point about the Sustainable Development Goals is that there isn't only one objective for a society or for an economy, and it can't be summarized only in dollars. The idea of the Sustainable Development Goals is that there are at least 4 quite fundamental objectives for any economy and any society. The first, of course, is economic development. So many of the SDGs are economic objectives. The second is social inclusion and social equity, because one could be a $1 trillion economy with vast inequalities, or one could be a $1 trillion economy in which the whole society is brought along. I happen to live in a very, very rich but extraordinarily unequal country that has become more unequal over the last 40 years, the United States. And we're feeling all of the political and social instabilities that have resulted from widening inequality. The fact that our political system is becoming less and less stable, that all politicians are basically disliked, and that we don't know what it will be from one election to the next anymore, is in significant part because the inequalities have become very large. We're 2 or 3 completely separate societies right now. In fact, I would say, from what I can gather, 3 very different societies. There's a half of the country that is not thriving, that's doing rather poorly. Their incomes are stagnant or falling. They're very unhappy. There's a part which we are fortunate to be part of that are professionals that do very well, and the economy has been kind to highly educated people, and that have been lucky in life to have that. And then there is a thin strand of very, very rich people who are really disconnected from the society, except that they own the government process. And so they're running the show, but they aren't part of the society itself. So the Sustainable Development Goals aims to avoid that. It aims to create an economy and society in which there are not such huge differences in income and in power and in influence. And I think that's quite important. The third objective of the SDGs, of course, is the environmental objectives, because the natural environment is under unprecedented stress every place in the world. And the Sustainable Development Goals are telling us to reach $1 trillion, reach it in an environmentally sustainable way. which is very hard. And one can just breathe the air or look at the environment to see how under stress it is now. And of course, in addition to what we can see with our own eyes or what we can breathe in our lungs, we have the long-term climate change and the loss of biodiversity, which are very much affecting India as they're affecting every part of the world. And the fourth pillar of sustainable development is peaceful societies that are also internationally interconnected in partnership. And so this is the fourth objective. Indeed, SDG number 17 is global partnerships. I'm a big believer in that, but it's not easy and it's getting harder in the world because I would say the world is more divided than at any time I can remember in my life. We have two raging wars underway right now, both of which are extremely dangerous. And you can't imagine, well, you hear about it, of course, but there's war talk every day in Washington about when is the war with China going to come? When is the war with China going to come? That's the war that will end all wars, because it will end the world if it actually happened. But our politicians are so irresponsible that they don't know. It's something not to be timed, it's something to be avoided at all costs. So the SDGs I want to emphasize are about economics, social inclusion, environmental sustainability, and peace. And these are the objectives I believe that need to be embedded in any strategy and in any plan for any society. And that's true for UP, it's true for India as a whole, it's true for the whole world, which is why, thank you for bringing me the notebook like this. You reminded me what I should really be talking about, which is a broad-based strategy. Now, to achieve the SDGs or to achieve a $1 trillion economy is, to a very significant extent, a challenge of investing in the future in the right way. So investment is absolutely at the core of any effective strategy. An economy doesn't grow by itself. An economy advances by making the kinds of investments that raise the productivity, that improve the technologies, that improve the livelihoods of the people in the economy. And that is an investment challenge. And so as a planning unit, planning the public investment side of that is the most important single task. What kinds of investments are needed, and especially by the public sector, to facilitate the transformation of an economy in this way? And that's a tough question to answer because there's a big challenge of analysis, and then there's a very big challenge of finance. How do you pay for what you want to do in order to achieve the outcomes? In part, private investors will pay for certain parts, but the public sector needs to pay for other parts. So the financing issue is absolutely central. Let me give you my quick answer to how to think about that challenge. I'll start with the idea that we are in the midst of four kinds of underlying changes in economic life that should be taken into account in the planning. These are obvious, but I think that they're quite important. The first is that more than ever we are in a knowledge economy. This change towards a knowledge economy has been underway for 100 years, I would say, but nothing is slowing it down. Everything that is needed for economic life and especially for higher incomes, depends on knowledge, depends on first, solid education, and then second, scientific and technological knowledge. And the innovation role in the economy has become ever more important. If I wanted to know one absolute number about an economy to judge where it stands, I would first ask, what is the typical schooling in that economy? How many years does a young person go to school? Then I would ask, how do they do on an internationally standardized test? And those two factors would give me a huge amount of information to assess where that economy stands and how it's changing. So with UP, I don't even know the most recent data because I tried to look at what is the comprehensive data. I could not find a reliable answer to that basic question, which I would like to know. But what proportion of the young people in UP are finishing upper secondary school right now? And when they finish, what is the quality of their education? There is the international testing, by the way, the PISA test, which is the OECD measurement test. India was part of it 15 years ago. It did very badly. It stopped being part of it. That's not a good approach. A good approach is, after doing badly, do better. And that's the approach I would like to see India to get back into the PISA testing and to start rising sharply in the ranks of the PISA outcomes. The PISA is the program on international school achievement. And it's really important to be benchmarked on that. Interestingly, the new results just came out, and they showed the East Asian countries at the very top. Again, China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, all the top ranks. They're doing Korea, Japan, they're doing something very well in the education. I'm trying to figure out what it is, but they're absolutely performing extremely well in terms of reading, mathematics, and science for 15-year-olds, which is what PISA is measuring. And this translates pretty directly into high incomes in a short period of time. And there are lots of studies now showing that schooling adjusted for quality is the single biggest predictor of economic outcomes, period, worldwide. So if I had to make one investment, it would be in education. And I would say everything else would take care of itself to some extent, because with a well-educated population, either they'll stay if they have what to use in infrastructure, or they will leave, but they will be successful. And as all of you know, the single most successful group in the United States are from India, are the Indian expats, who are the most professional, highest trained, highest educated. But make sure that is society-wide. And this, I think, would be my number one answer to UP's challenge. It doesn't come immediately. I know you want even faster answers, but educating young people with quality is the single most important investment any society can possibly make. Now, the second related transformation in the societies, of course, is the digital transformation, because every age is defined by its leading technological advance. And our age is definitely defined by the digital technologies. In our visit today to Sitipur, and when we went, of course, this is no news to you, but when we went to the ASHA workers, when we went to the agricultural workers, when we went to the education workers, everybody's got smartphones, everybody's using them. Not in the most organized way to capture all the information yet, but the digital technology platforms are pervasive, which is fantastic, but I think are really a crucial tool for further advances. Are children learning online effectively? Is the online component being integrated with the in-class component effectively? Is the online health component being integrated with what happens in the clinic, what happens in the home, and so forth? The answer seems to be a bit, but not in a comprehensive and systematic way as much as could be done. But one thing is for sure, every successful economy will be a 5G, 6G, 7G economy in the next 15 years. And everything that business will want, everything that households will need, everything that doctors will need, educators will need, will be on digital platforms, because the technology is absolutely wonderful. Now, this is an area where India is really in a leadership, and also not only in a leadership in the absolute technology, in a leadership in applying the technology in a low-income setting, where India has done more than any place in the world to do this. And by the way, that is one of the reasons why India, of course, is growing so rapidly and is now the fastest growing large economy in the world, and why the growth could even accelerate. And it's a phenomenal opportunity for exports, exporting digital services of all kinds. And India's exports to Africa in this regard will be enormous for the next 30 years if India takes the opportunity and makes that connection systematically. So first point, knowledge economy. Second, digital economy. Third point, green economy. There is no escape from the need to transform technologies to green, zero carbon, low environmental impact technologies. And this is a very big challenge, but it is an inescapable problem because we need to do this urgently. India is very vulnerable to the global climate change. And so as much as it would be convenient to say, don't bother us for a while, we have other things on our mind, because India depends on coal, it depends on a fossil fuel economy, the transformation has to take place at the global level and will have to take place within India, because every country is going to have to be in a zero carbon energy system in order to be able to trade with the rest of the world. You can see Europe already putting the limitations on trade with countries with high carbon content. This is going to become a general proposition worldwide because the consequences of what's happening now are so serious. And so you know that 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and 2024 is going to be worse, and the amount of dislocations are enormous, and so the need and the pressure for decarbonization will be huge. So when you make the plans, you have to make the plans for making this transformation quite quickly. What does that mean? It means a few important things. One is that the power grid, and you're going to need a lot more electricity in this state, a a lot more than you have now to be a trillion-dollar economy. It's going to have to be green power. It can't be coal-based power. There's an obvious answer, by the way, which is your next door neighbor to the north, Nepal, has a lot of hydropower to sell to you, and you should be buying it and making, tapping that potential and just making a connection for a massive amount of very green, very affordable, low-cost hydropower. They're not so keen, you're not so keen, but somehow the scaling up has to take place. And you're in a very good position to tap that, and they're in a very good position to develop that hydropower. And so this is just one example. Another example is that, and it's happening very fast, is that the whole automobile sector will become electric vehicles very quickly. China by far dominates right now, but India is starting to develop an EV industry. And I think everybody here saw what I saw yesterday, which is the announcement of a $2 billion contract of actually a Vietnamese electric vehicle manufacturer with Tamil Nadu. I want the next one to be here, not in Tamil Nadu, and that will be a big component of building a $1 trillion economy. So green is the third component, and it's pretty pervasive because almost every industry has a low, weak environmental technology and a environmentally protective technology route. And we really need to shift worldwide to the environmental protection route. And the Sustainable Development Goals are all about that. SDG 11 on sustainable cities, SDG 12 on circular economy, SDG 13 on climate, SDG 14 on the marine environment, and SDG 15 on the terrestrial environment, protecting all of those, measuring, but choosing technologies that are appropriate. So that's the third element of transformation that I think is very important. And the fourth I've just mentioned, and it is that virtually all economic success, even for a state as huge as UP, and even for India, which is now the most populous country in the world, nothing can be accomplished within the country itself. Everything depends on interconnection and on trade. And so connectedness is the fourth dimension of economic success. This state must be an outward-looking, export-oriented state, whether it's selling goods and services to the rest of India or selling goods and services to the rest of the world. And so the outward orientation is crucial, and the interconnectedness is crucial. So my first rule of economics, which is almost the opposite of the rule of politics, is get along with your neighbor. So in politics, the neighbor almost always is a threat. You're fighting over the borders. They're a risk. History has divided the countries. But in economics, the most natural thing is to connect with your neighbors because you share ecosystems with them. You can easily diversify primary energy sources with them. They will buy your goods. You will specialize and you will buy their goods in trade. And so good regional integration is extremely important. That's why I mentioned Nepal and UP. I don't know all the intricacies of the politics by any means. I really don't, so forgive me for that. But from an economic point of view, that's a logical fit. I'm in favor, again, I apologize on political naivete, but I would like very good relations between China and India. I just believe the more interconnectedness, the more peaceful trade, the better. Of course, I know there are disputes that are quite serious, so I don't mean to downplay that. But from an economic point of view, we shouldn't divide the world, us versus them, or there are friends, there are enemies. We should really be interconnected. The United States used to understand this when it was more confident as a country. And so the US spent a lot of time trying to integrate world markets, many trade rounds, building WTO. Now the United States is a nervous wreck. It's really psychologically very anxious because of China. This is mainly anxiety that has no basis, but China became so big and successful so fast, it made the United States very neurotic, if I could just use a psychological concept rather than an economic concept. Every discussion every day is about China instead of about all our problems inside the United States. So because of that very high anxiety, the US is now closing its borders. It wants India to be a friend, but against China, and it's trying to reshape the world. You're on our side, they're on the other side. Russia and China are evil. We're good. We want India on our side. Don't play this game at all. Of course you won't. India is much too big to play a game like that, and much too experienced and much too smart. But the world should not be divided this way between us and them. Everyone should try to be trade partners and economic relations with every other part of the world. And this, I think, is actually a key part of building your $1 trillion and then your $10 trillion economy is good relations. So if I were you, I'd welcome Chinese investment. I would welcome trade. I would try to build, I don't know if a rail can really go over the 4,000 meter pass between Nepal and Tibet, but I would try to build online connectivity or overland connectivity in that way and strengthen rather than weaken or sharpen the divides, because to me, a connected world is a much more prosperous world. It's also a much more peaceful world, and I would not try to make any of the divisions in this way. So, here's the homework. What to do to advance the UP economy? What would it look like as a $1 trillion economy? What would it look like as a $5 trillion economy? Because you'll get there pretty quickly also. What are the structural changes that will come, and how to bring those about through public investment and through private investment? And that requires a quantitative exercise, a real visioning exercise. So I have a project at the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network called The World in 2050, trying to understand what the world economy will look like in 2050. I would propose Uttar Pradesh in 2050. I don't know if you have that or not, but I would propose trying to do a quantitative assessment. What will this state look like of course, you have to also ask what will India as a whole look like in the year 2050? Because then you have a 25-year perspective. What kinds of investments, what kind of transformation, what will the urban-rural balance look like? What should the power grid, the electricity structure, the energy sector, the transport sector, all of the infrastructure sector look like? What are the high priority projects to achieve a 2050 vision, or it could be 2049 vision or 2047 vision, depending, make it for the 100th anniversary of India. But make that not only vision, but then quantitative assessment and the public investment strategy. When I do such an exercise for a country of interest, I find two things. One, rapid economic growth is very possible because we live in an age where the technology is favorable for rapid advancement. This is one key point. And second, that there are, I find, 6 major categories of investment, public investment, that are crucial. The first, as I mentioned, is education, absolutely central. Every child at least completing upper secondary school with qualified teachers and qualified infrastructure. Second is healthcare, making sure that there is proper health coverage, universal health coverage of the population, and you have a good structure, but it's undermanned, or under-resourced, but the structure is there from the primary health post onward, and the structure of the cadres are all there, but they're not filled yet. The doctors are missing, there aren't enough, there's equipment missing, there's coverage missing. We could see that just on the visit to one site. But everything is there in principle, but it's not there in practice. So that's number 2. The third is the green energy technology. Believe me, you're going to need a lot more power, a lot more terawatts in this state. And so a massive expansion of electricity coverage and use. Where is it going to come from? How's it going to be built? Who's going to finance it? Very important question. The fourth is sustainable agriculture and land use. One thing we could see within 1 hour of our visit in Sitapur is the tremendous technological advances coming to agriculture very, very rapidly right now. The drones are now coming in, the first 6 drones for irrigating the fields, the automatic seeding machines, the autonomous farms. Basically, agriculture will have a big advance of productivity per hectare, but also a huge decline of agricultural workforce because mechanization is going to transform historically the labor force here from an agricultural labor force to an overwhelmingly urban population. And that's going to happen in the next 20 years. And so urbanization is the 5th investment, making sure that cities are livable and sustainable. Social housing probably is going to have to play a major role because the housing question is really a major social challenge. And I don't know of any society that is able to address the housing question without a government direct role, because too much of the population is left out if it's only based on private market demand and who can afford housing and who can't. So the social housing question will be a huge part of the investment needs. And then the sixth is the digital platforms, making sure that there's universal coverage and that there are the applications. Now, India is doing such a wonderful job on this. This is really where you're way in the lead, and our project is aiming to see if we can help fill a few gaps. I'm sure there will be no gaps, even on their own. In 10 or 15 years, we'd like to help you speed up the process so that there's a good IT platform for all state service provision, health, education, agriculture, payments, whatever, in a very rich digital environment, but making the investments for that, whether it's the content investment or the physical connectivity in remote places, is the sixth area that I would suggest. Then this has to be put into quantitative form. And the problem for India has always been, if you look at what the investment needs are, for example, for education, and then compare it with the budget, there's a very large gap. And this is a quite basic question that has not been finally addressed. I'm out of date on the data, but the last time we looked, and we had a brief discussion about it yesterday, the total health spending of the public sector, union and state, for the health coverage is about 2% of GDP, for example. Look around the world to any place that has good health coverage, and it's at least 4% of GDP, if not 5, 6, 7% of GDP. So India as a whole is tremendously underinvesting in healthcare. Look at the spending on education. My guess is that it's exactly the same situation, that the levels of public spending on education are far below what is needed to achieve quality education, at even just through upper secondary. But the goal should be universal completion through upper secondary, and 40 to 50% of young people going on to tertiary education, or maybe even 70% going on, with 30% for vocational skills in a 2-year program and another 40% continuing on for a 4-year bachelor's and onward. Now, the budget for that is way beyond the state's budget for education, I'm sure. And so this is another big question. How much would it cost? What's really needed? It seems like teachers and doctors are two of the big gaps that what happens, what we were even could see today. When the budget is too low, what happens? There aren't enough quality teachers and there aren't enough doctors around by a large number. We were hearing that in one of the CHCs, I think it was, it's 5,000 patients a day and 7 doctors. A doctor cannot see 700 patients in a day. Even an extremely capable Indian doctor cannot do that. And so there's a huge shortage. And the problem is cost. There isn't a budget. And then there aren't the doctors available because there aren't the medical schools to train the number of doctors that are really needed. And that's also a cost factor. So my point is, make a numerical, quantitative, 25-year scenario and understand what the financing needs are, and then what are the budget and financial opportunities to close the gaps. Now, I don't know the answers to those questions, so I can't give you the bottom line of my lecture to how to do this exactly. But what I can tell you for sure is that there are not enough government revenues to do what needs to be done. This I'm sure of, because India's total revenue collection as a share of GDP is about 20% of India's GDP. And you cannot have sustainable development for less than 30% of GDP, because the needs are so large. Education, healthcare, energy sector, environmental protection, science, technology. It just requires more funding, because there's also pensions and public administration and all the other things that are needed. So then comes the question of the next part of a planning exercise. What is a possible financial model to make this work? And I have a couple of basic questions. One, at the union level, what will be the future of public finance at the union level? What will be the tax administration? What will be the allocations of the union budget? Because it needs to increase. But my second question is, to what extent do the states have any leeway or any flexibility to make their own state level financial arrangements that give more flexibility to the state budgets? You're a state, UP is a state that, of course, I think would be the 5th largest country in the world. So you're not a small state, you're a giant. You need a fiscal policy, you need a budget flexibility, you need a tax flexibility, you need an opportunity to borrow independently. I don't know all the constitutional arrangements for that, whether it's even feasible or not, but to really achieve the kinds of results that UP needs fiscal flexibility and financial flexibility. And I don't know whether that's even possible constitutionally or not. Can the state borrow? Under what terms? Can it borrow with permission from the center, or can it borrow on its own accord? Can it raise taxes? If so, what kinds of taxes are state responsibility and so forth? Is there a political space for that? Could it be phased in over many years? Is tax revolt the #1 political thing, like it is in the United States, by the way? The reason we have such high inequality in the United States is the rich control the political system, and their first command is don't raise any taxes on us. And of course, the bottom half of the population absolutely rejects any more taxes. And so we haven't had a rise of our federal tax to GDP ratio in 50 years now, because the political system is completely trapped. We don't have a VAT even in the United States. So we collect at the federal level 16% of GDP in tax revenues, which is very small, by the way. The states add another 12% or so, so it's something like 29 or 30%, but it's not enough to run the country, and the political system doesn't allow the change. I don't know your situation, but I do know from an economic point of view, if you made a scenario for UP being a high-income, advanced, sustainable economy in the year 2047, and asked what it would cost, you would need more fiscal revenues to accomplish that, because to pay for all of these things. And then another question is, borrowing. I don't know whether states can borrow or not, and on what basis. But certain of these investments have a good, very good rate of return. Of course, many of the project investments in the power sector or in other sectors have a natural project finance. But even borrowing for education is not a bad deal as long as the terms of the borrowing are 40-year borrowing, because it takes a long time to get the returns to education fully returned into the budget. But the whole fiscal financial framework would be, I think, the added component. And the last part that I would emphasize is, of course, the sector strategies, because I've been talking about social services, health and education. I've been talking about basic infrastructure of transport, and I'm very happy to see the water transport being developed, the rail transport being developed, the land transport, the highway transport. This is all crucial, absolutely crucial. But then comes the private sector side: agriculture, mining, industry, services. And of course, an economy like yours is going to be very diverse. It's going to have advances in all of the major sectors. This state has tremendous potential for agricultural advance, but it will be with many, many fewer people, for sure. So the labor force in agriculture will fall to under 10% of the labor force, and because it's going to all be mechanized, and it's going to be drones, it's going to be smart seeding machines, it's going to be automatic harvesters, it's going to be precision agriculture without the workforce. The workforce will be much more in industry and construction, and a tremendous share, 70% or more, in the service economy, because that will be that will be where the population and employment shifts. The last part of the planning is, therefore, how international trade intersects with the changing structure of the economy. Surely UP, for example, will be a major touristic economy in the future. And we had a good discussion of this yesterday. UP will be one of the world's leading tourist destinations. You already are. Some of the most iconic places in the world are in this state. By the way, people who come to visit the Taj Mahal from outside do not know they're visiting UP. They know they're visiting the Taj Mahal. They may know they're visiting Agra, but the state is not branded at all as UP, as a tourist destination. This is a little bit of a mistake, because you'd like them to go from Agra to the next site, to the next site, to the next site, and to understand that they're coming for, but surely this will be a boom sector. And if you can, as we were discussing yesterday, bring in hundreds of millions of people for 30 days, manage the infrastructure, have everyone come, and have this most remarkable event, which is a one-of-a-kind event on the planet, you can do everything in tourism. But to go back to my earlier point, I don't know, do you want a lot of Chinese tourists? I would. They're close by, they would love to come, but that depends on good relations with India and China. And they will come, they'll spend a lot of money, they'll learn a lot about India, they'll learn a lot about culture, they'll find out how much of their culture originated in India, which will be a nice thing for them to find out, because remember, China is to a very significant extent a Buddhist civilization also. Since you invented that here in this state, that would be also a good thing for the Chinese to come and learn, and they'll come by the tens of millions. So all of that interconnected side, I think, is extremely important and should be part of this vision or this mid-century plan. So let me end there. My basic points are that when we speak about a $1 trillion UP economy, believe me, it's going to be 1 trillion, 5 trillion, 10 trillion. This will be a very successful place, and I have no doubt about you reaching that. Of course, exactly the year, that depends on many things, including good luck and the ability to put a full strategy in place. But the direction and the magnitudes are absolutely reachable and clear. Second, to do this requires a strategy. You can't do this without a plan. It's not the business sector just coming in. It's not showing this is a good place to do business. It's much more than that. It's the public investment side alongside the private investment side. The main thing that a private investor wants in a good sector, absolutely the main thing, is actually the two main things, sorry. The two main things a private investor wants: number one, a skilled workforce. They want to know that when they're here, they're going to get workers who know how to work, know how to use the technology, are going to be very effective, innovative. You get that, that's 90% of the way. And the other thing they want, of course, is the infrastructure. Is there power, water, and transport? And if you can give that answer, those are the two things you need: a quality labor force and a quality infrastructure. And the most important, on infrastructure, add fiber. 5G, clean energy, because it's going to matter what kind of energy, land transport, rail, road, and water transport. If you show them all of that is here, everyone will come. And I want to be at the door welcoming them as they arrive. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. With your permission, can we take some questions? Yeah. So now the floor is open for any questions which you would like to. Anyone from the audience? Yeah, ma'am. Professor Nirupam, would you like to moderate this?
Tapered down to just the maintenance function and focusing on the quality observed that every time it's mentioned, maintain 6% of your GDP on school infrastructure and this kind of thing. That needs to be tapered down to the real baseline position as of now, and it has to be reviewed continuously. That if you have reached the saturation point, there's no point in opening schools and then having children there and then spreading the resources sparsely all over. These were my two observations.
Yeah, thank you very much. On the budget shares, all of the rules that we state, how much share should be this sector and that sector, are really very imprecise guidelines. And in the international side, it said things like 20% of the budget should be for education. I object to this way of doing things because what I prefer is to make the costing from the bottom up, which is what are the actual needs? How many schools are being built? How many teachers need to be trained and hired? How many administrators? Making sure that these schools have the electricity or the water or other infrastructure and so on. So I think the costing exercise is more important than the rule. The rule is a shorthand, but for a planning unit, you don't need the shorthand. You need the detail. And so having a module on primary education, secondary education, number of children, because that's going to change also over time. The share of 6-year-olds to 18-year-olds will decline because of the slowing population growth and the stabilization of the population. So these can all be built up. A good spreadsheet can give a lot of information about that. Also, what happens is you need to assess very realistically what are the salary levels needed to attract and retain a qualified teacher who now is going to have more opportunities in the private sector or a private academy or doing something else. And usually, if the public budget is inadequate, the policy is to give an inadequate salary. And then the next result is we have a shortage. And then everybody wonders why there's a shortage. And it's because the salary is too low. The salary is too low because the budget is not sufficient. And so I always would urge a realistic, bottom-up assessment of needs. And the point you're making would come directly out of that, because there would be different phases. There would be the scale-up phase, there would be the maintenance phase, there would be the changing demographics of the state, and it would all come quite clearly here. When it comes to the individual sectors of the economy, this is also, I think, a very good area for work, for analysis. Certain sectors are economy-wide. Cost of power in the economy. How much is it going to cost to get green electricity? That is basically a financing issue combined with the primary energy source issue. If you bring hydropower from Nepal to UP, I don't know what the latest engineering analysis is, but it's probably something like 5 cents per kilowatt hour, 5 cents US per kilowatt hour to bring it to UP, or maybe a little bit, 6 cents or something like that. Even lower or higher? Lower. Buy it. Expand their capacity, because this is that is a huge competitive advantage for the state. Low-cost energy, and you probably can't beat that cost for clean, green energy. And so, but again, that kind of analysis is really perfect work for the planning unit. When it comes to the particular sectors, agriculture or particular industry, I'm not a sector expert at all, but the main thing that they will be looking for is, as I said, the quality of the infrastructure as a place to work, industrial zones or parks where they'll be able to carry out the functioning, and a good rail line to an international port, or rail lines throughout the rest of India that are effective and quick, or the waterway, because that also can be a huge advance for many kinds of industrial goods, this waterway number 1, which could be a very big deal. So I think that the sector competitiveness will depend a lot on the infrastructure and the labor force, and if you have those in order, the businesses will come. Because UP is a wonderful place to produce for the domestic Indian market and for the world, as long as the transport and power environment is, and labor force quality is good.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much for a very enlightening talk. We understand that the peace is a prerequisite for sustainable development. And as you have also mentioned, and now UP is by and large is a peaceful state. So having that situation in the state, what do you think would be the roadmap that UP becomes a role model, sustainable state for the other states in the country, number 1. Number 2, I am very happy that you have focused on education and particularly on quality education and skilling at different levels. And I am dealing with education, and I have been a UGC chairperson. Now the national education policy also talks about quality education for all, and it also focuses on multidisciplinary holistic education also for skill development at all stages. And therefore, now we also have a regulatory framework for having the campuses of foreign universities in India. So particularly in this context, I would like to know that do you think that some good universities of USA would be interested to have their campuses in UP? Thank you.
That's great. Let me start with the second issue. I think you could attract a lot of international universities that would be excellent. I wouldn't aim only at U.S. universities, though there are many of them, because every place that you attract a university will also be a connection for you to the world. So we were in Monash University in Melbourne recently. They have 9 campuses around the world. They could have a 10th here. They're looking for that kind of broad base. And if you help them to understand this is a historical place, this is an entry point for all of India, for Indian civilization also, which it is, you'll make it very attractive. Again, a Chinese university with a campus here, Middle East universities with campuses here. Most major universities are looking for partnerships now because they understand they have to become global to really be able to serve a global clientele and to serve their students who know that they're entering a global scene. So this is definitely something you can offer. And if you have the authority to do it or the encouragement to do it, and it's something I can help on. The network that I lead for the United Nations has almost 2,000 universities in the network. And we're talking all the time with the university leaders, and they want to make new partnerships. So this is something where I would be very, very happy to help. On being a role model, I think what would be very important as a first step is UP benchmarking its performance against the Sustainable Development Goals so that you have a scorecard, and second, that you have a plan, as I've been talking about. Here's the plan. Third, that you're actually carrying out the plan. Those are the three steps for being the role model for the rest of India. And I think you can gain a lot of credibility by having the benchmarks, annual reporting, having the plan of action, and having a benchmarking of the delivery of the plan itself.
Just for your information, sir, we had a whole session of the legislature on the Sustainable Development Goals, and it was a 24-hour session where the politicians, the MLAs, spoke on each of the sectors that was assigned to them, and there's a document on that.
Fantastic.
And all the departments then reported on that, and ultimately it became a good document. But obviously it has to be followed up. That's the challenge.
And the unit, again, that I lead for the UN has a lot of experience in building a scorecard. So we have an annual index, but we do it at subnational level also. So it would be quite straightforward to have an SDG scorecard for UP and to actually take it back to 2015 and then carry it forward. We could help on that.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Within the context of economic growth and sustainable development, there's a perspective around population planning, demographic dividend, and gender equality.
Yes.
What would be your short and long-term advice for UP?
In general, the natural direction for development everywhere is fertility rates declining to really below replacement rate, so that population after about 30 years peaks and then gradually starts to come down. That would be my general recommendation. The fertility rate in UP, I think, is close to 2.1 or something right now. Still a little higher.
Just about 2 here. Just about 2.
Just about 2.
Yeah, because these numbers of 2.1 were.
Yeah. So that's good. You have a lot of people in this state. You probably don't need to double it again. I just looked at the estimate in 1950. Lucknow had 500,000 people. Now it has about 5 million people. So that's a lot of, it's a crowded place. So reaching replacement or going below replacement gradually and modestly is a big help. India's already reaping some of the dividend of this fertility decline. I'm working a lot in Africa. The fertility rate is still above 4. It's impossible to achieve development with the fertility rate so high. Impossible. Because you're chasing a population that is doubling every 25 years, and you can't keep up no matter what. All your saving is just going to just trying to keep up, not to get ahead. And so it's good that the fertility rate has come down. It will come down further because with urbanization, this state will be 60 or 70% urban by mid-century, I would guess. Because you won't need the jobs in agriculture. The machines will be doing that. So people will live in cities, and in cities, children are expensive, and women are working, and it's hard to have more than two, and many will choose to have one. And so that is the natural course of things, and that's what I would recommend also. Does that make sense to you? Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Jeffrey. Now I would request our Chief Secretary, sir, to share his thoughts and also thank Professor Jeffrey.
Professor Jeffrey Sachs, colleagues, it's a great privilege to listen to such a great scholar in development economics, Jeffrey Sachs, and on the subject which is so important for us, the $1 trillion economy. It's a matter of coincidence that just today, Honorable Chief Minister, along with dozen of honorable ministers and all senior officials, had a review of the progress on $1 trillion economy in this room itself. And a road map was chalked out. How we are, he reviewed what we have done, where the process started in August 2022, when we selected Deloitte India as our consultant. They came out with a roadmap, a detailed roadmap by April 2023, and we have been working on it so far. The state is eager and has resolved to reach to the $1 trillion by 2027. That is another 4 to 4.5 years. And it is possible. So let me recall from Jeffrey's presentation here, all the 4 pillars of the Sustainable Development Goal, whether it is economic development, the social equity or the social inclusion, environmental sustainability, or the connected world, connected with the rest of the world. They are all very much important part of our $1 trillion economy. Because when we went for the investment in February 2023, there was a global investor meet. We went to 18 different countries. We invited investors from across the globe and also from across the country. And we'll be happy to know that so far we have signed MOUs to the tune of 40 lakhs crores of investment in the state of Uttar Pradesh. And I'm very confident in a month or so, when we are going to have the first groundbreaking ceremony, something around 12 lakhs crore is going to be grounded in the first groundbreaking ceremony. This is what the new Uttar Pradesh is. And that is why we have the hope. Our budget only 6-7 years back was less than 2 lakhs crore, and now it is close to the 7 lakhs crores. Our investments have almost quadrupled. The focus on the infrastructure, focus on various things, the 5 strategies which Professor Sachs mentioned, the knowledge economy. We are moving so fast on the knowledge economy, whether it is the ITI, the Polytechnic, or the engineering colleges, medical colleges, one college for every district, medical college for every district. So many have been added. The new universities, we have given permission to 43 new universities
private universities. 10 have already started functioning and 3 are coming to the next cabinet for allowing them to start functioning. So this is what the new Uttar Pradesh is. In the knowledge economy, the focus on the skilling. There is so much of focus on the skilling. When it is the digital, the second strategy was the digital economy. Let me just give one example. The Honorable Prime Minister focused on the agri-stack, and we were almost at the level 0 just a year back. The whole team from Ministry of Agriculture had come on Saturday, only 2 days back, just to understand what UP has done. And I am happy to share with you that we have geo-referenced nearly 7 crores, 70 million plots in Uttar Pradesh. And in the last Kharif season, we had only in 21 districts, 100%, and the balance 54 districts, 10 villages each, just for the practice sake. But now in the Rabi season, starting, very soon, it is the digital crop survey for all the plots in all 75 districts. And the potential is immense. We have already done the plot registry, we have already done the crop registry, and now we are going to do the farmers registry, and very soon it's totally going to be on the digital map. And this is one example I've given. Many other things. The state has progressed. This is under the leadership of our Honorable Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath ji. The state is ambitious. The state is making plans, and the state is executing its plans in a very, very concerted manner. When you see the Honorable Chief Minister, he was sitting here for 2.5 hours from 10:30 to 1 o'clock and reviewing the progress of the $1 trillion economy. Everything so much in detail. As a Chief Secretary, I keep reviewing almost every week. It is not even a month. Every week, I keep reviewing the progress, what is being done. So this is the new Uttar Pradesh, and that is why we are poised for that. The third area which you said was on the connectedness. And yes, as I mentioned, we are quite connected. We are getting people from all over the world. Urbanization is our focus. 112 new urban local bodies have been constituted just in the last 1 year. And more than 200 have been expanded. That's why when the Lucknow's population has grown multiple times, it is not only the population has increased because of the natural birth, but also because of so much of migration from the rural to urban. There is people have hope, and the city is changing, and so is the cities and the country is changing. So this is how, when it comes to tourism, the tourism in the city of Varanasi, just one Varanasi, has grown 100 times, more than 100 times. And Ayodhya, before the Lord Ram has come, the Lord Ram is coming there on the 22nd of January. The Prana Pratishtha is going to be there only few days from now. The tourism has grown more than 50 times. And we expect a big boom in Ayodhya. And so is the case for because Uttar Pradesh is such a fertile land. It is the land where Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, Buddha, many Jain Tirthankars, they were all born here. We have plenty of water resources. We have good fertile land. And our biggest strength is our youth. Till 50s, we are going to be the most youthful state in the country. Till 50. So this is an opportunity for the next so many years. We are going to be so youthful, and youth properly skilled, properly educated. It's a universal education, properly educated. Our honorable advisor to our honorable Chief Minister in the education sector, he mentioned about our National Education Policy 2020. And UP is one of the topmost states in implementation of the National Education Policy. This has been accredited by the Ministry of Education, Government of India. Because the whole thinking process is changed. And I'm sure when Dr. Nirupam Bajpayee is going to work in district Sitapur, he is going to realize the amount of work which has been done. in the last so many years. So you will find UP is in a different state. And more than that, because we started at a very, very low level. Our indices, as I said, I mean, when it was geo-referencing of the plots, we were at 0 level. We had 0 plots which were there in 1 year, 100% have been done. So our benchmark where we started was very low, but the UP under our Chief Minister and getting the kind of a focus from the Honorable Prime Minister, that's a big thing. He is the biggest connector to the global economy. Our one district, one product. It has made such a wave. It has made such a big change that, I mean, it is get recognition across globe, and now we want to go to the next level of one district, one product. So I would like to thank Professor Sachs for giving us a perspective, and I'm sure Deloitte is here. They must have taken note of it, and our Principal Secretary Planning is the nodal officer for the whole process of $1 trillion economy. They have all made notes. All our officers have made note. We were all very much eager to listen to Professor Sachs, and we are working on it. This will give us further more energy, further more commitment, and further more drive to think on those lines. They focus on education, focus on health, focus on tourism, focus on skilling, because these are they create the kind of environment, they create a kind of a ecosystem which will lead the state to move from one level to another level. Our Chief Minister, while he was reviewing, he made a very, very important statement. Just made note of that. He said, first you have to believe that we can make it $1 trillion economy. And then you start working on it. As long as you question that we cannot do it, you will never be able to do it. The focus should be, we first be convinced, and seeing the kind of changes which Uttar Pradesh has done, even during the COVID period, we did not go into the negative growth. Most states in the Union of India have gone for the negative growth. We did not go for the negative growth. We were one who managed COVID in a fantastic manner. This Uttar Pradesh, the way it did, it was able to cater to the requirements of many others who were migrated and who were passing through the state, and they were made to halt here and have the good experience and then go to the next place. So the way we manage our economy during this is the global pandemic. And from there on, when the Honorable Prime Minister gave a new dimension to the Indian economic development, this was Atmanirbhar Bharat. The Atmanirbhar Bharat, and then he gave a new aspiration of making the country developed by the year 2047. We are very eager to make Uttar Pradesh, in line with the Honorable Prime Minister's vision, a developed state, a developed district, a developed village. We are all working on it, sir. And your exposition today on this subject from detailed perspective and the kind of experience you have across the globe. Professor Sachs, he is a known name across the globe. Anywhere he goes, and people will be very happy, very eager to listen to him. So we are so fortunate to hear him today. And sure enough, this is going to give us that kind of a spark which is needed after the Honorable Chief Minister's review, and this perspective, we will work on this, the $1 trillion economy. So thank you, sir, for being here, and thank you for associating with Uttar Pradesh through the project which is being led by Nirupam Bajpayee and the Reliance and the state government. All the subjects which are being touched there, whether it is the health, whether it is the nutrition, whether it is agriculture, education, all these are very, very important. They will all be, the kind of model which is going to emerge out of your work, that will definitely help us in scaling up across the state and making the state move on that resolve to become a $1 trillion economy, and a $1 trillion economy with equitable, a $1 trillion economy with the inclusive development, not a disparity, not a difference where people are rich and people are very poor. It's an inclusive development. Everybody gets an opportunity. That's what the new India is. And when you say housing for all, education for all, skilling for all, that's the new India. It's an inclusive India. So thank you all, and thank you all for coming here in a big number. Sure enough, you are going with a big energy. So thank you, and thanks to Dr. Sachs. Thank you.